All right, everyone, a good evening to you just before 10 o'clock here on Thursday, August 24th. I'm Nick Dunn along with Zach Batten here. We are live on YouTube and Facebook across multiple of our number of pages this evening, stretching from the oil region in northwestern PA, stretching through Ohio news and weather, and a couple of our other pages as well. We have a severe thunderstorm watch that has just been issued now until 3 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So it is about 10 o'clock right now. So about a 5-hour watch, and you kind of take a look at the progression of this. So we were watching a line of storms that is organized very quickly and is very mature right now across southeastern Michigan. We do have a plethora of severe thunderstorm warnings there. I do want to start off with the lone warning that we do have in the Bell Park coverage area for LaGrange County, Indiana, until 10:30 for 60-mile-per-hour winds. This cell not necessarily the meanest looking, but it is diving off towards the southeast. That's crossing the Indiana Toll Road just to the north of Shipshewana, or Amish country, for those of you that are familiar with that particular area. That'll be moving off towards Angola and eventually down into Williams County. The bigger area of interest and concern right now is across southeastern Michigan. And Zach, we have a plethora of severe thunderstorm warnings. A couple of these have been tagged destructive for winds up to 80 miles per hour. And you were just sharing that we had at least one report, a damage report that is, out of southeastern Michigan where looks like a tree fell onto a nursing home.
Yeah, it looks like numerous trees down and then a roof of a nursing home or a nursery home. Not really sure if there's a difference based on their wording, but the roof of that building collapsed. There's definitely at least one potentially significant tornado in Michigan with this line as it's moved through not too long ago.
Yeah, we do not have any active tornado warnings. The red and orange flashing boxes, those are differentiated now, and I have to give a big credit to Zach on this to kind of help us differentiate when certain severe thunderstorm warnings are tagged destructive. And you're also going to get that alert on your phone tonight should any of these warnings be tagged destructive. And you kind of take a look here. We already have a severe thunderstorm warning now approaching the Ohio-Michigan border for Adrian. I believe that is Lenawee County, if I'm not mistaken. Just to the north of Toledo there, and that warning goes until 11:15, and it is already tagged as considerable for winds up to 70 miles per hour, and that's a concern too as we work through the rest of the overnight. Damage and wind is going to be the big main concern for us, as the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center has issued a severe thunderstorm watch, again, that encompasses about the northern third of our coverage area here this evening. And as you see these areas highlighted in the salmon color, when we click on the watch, it goes until 3 a.m. Your main hazards, hail to ping pong ball size, the maximum wind gust potential. Okay, and I use the word potential here to highlight that there's a chance of an isolated wind gust as high as 85 miles per hour, and a maximum storm tops could reach 50,000 feet in some instances. The primary storm motion to the southeast at 40 miles per hour, but Zach, what is not highlighted in that severe thunderstorm watch is the fact that this line of storms is going to be producing some prolific rainfall, and places like Toledo, Sandusky, Cleveland, Tiffin, Akron, and any places in between really cannot handle any more water, and this is not a very good setup for that either.
Yeah, definitely not. We're absolutely going to see some flooding issues in the same places we saw them yesterday. The only real benefit here is these storms are actually moving and not really training over the same location. So once they're in and out, you're good. But while they're here, they're going to dump some incredibly heavy rain. So flooding definitely going to be a problem.
Yeah, flooding is going to be a big time issue tonight across north central Ohio, in addition to the fact of severe thunderstorms. And I know, Zach, we had Bash on the Bay. Day 2 was canceled, and based on these storms are kind of tracking right in that same area, I would imagine that if there's any further damage, Day 3 could be canceled.
Well, the good news is Bash on the Bay is only a 2-day event.
Okay,
so,
I thought it was a 3-day.
They're done there. I did see some pictures from the islands a little earlier today. A lot of like the tents and stuff, the vendor tents and whatnot that were there were all blown over. There was a row of porta potties blown over, streets flooded. It was a real mess over there.
Yeah, so they really did not get a chance to enjoy much of that show at all, because it was canceled today, and obviously it was canceled yesterday too, from what we were told there as well. So these are the kind of different things we're kind of keeping our eyes on right now. Again, this watch was just issued. It does include Erie County, PA, down into portions of Clarion County, then Mercer County, PA as well, Crawford County, PA as well. That goes until 3 a.m. Zach, I think right now this line of storms may kind of impact primarily Toledo and Cleveland, at least in the near term. Those would be my two main concerns in terms of areas of interest to maybe see the worst of this through, say midnight or so at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The development kind of between that main bulk right there in southeast lower Michigan, and then kind of the warning we have for LaGrange County, the development in between there is kind of struggling. So there might end up being a little gap, and then primarily, Toledo to Cleveland, we'll see potentially the worst of it, unless kind of that area there fills in a little bit.
Yeah, the environment is certainly ripe tonight. We have recovered pretty well. We could have recovered a little bit more in some locations, but I do think we have sufficient instability. We have sufficient wind shear to work with. Now, keep in mind, too, I'm going to turn the watch off here for a little bit. There is still a little bit of convective inhibition to work with, but I think these storms are going to overcome that. So even if the atmosphere is slightly capped across northeastern Ohio, I'm not necessarily concerned about these storms, weakening. I think they are going to survive across the lake. And now downtown Detroit has been put under a severe thunderstorm warning for winds up to 70 miles per hour there. So that now comes right down to the Ohio-Michigan state line, so to speak. It looks like, okay, good. The Weather Service in northern Indiana's radar is back up. It was offline a little earlier. So kind of giving you an update on these warnings. And we won't keep you too long just because, things might get a little interesting here within the next hour or two. But if you live just to the north of downtown Toledo, Zach, I'm not sure if you already have our Toledo Skycam pointed north. I would imagine there's a pretty decent light show potentially, so we can kind of keep an eye on that as well, as these storms will be approaching downtown Toledo here soon. Right now, the storm motions on these are moving off to the southeast now. According to Detroit, these are moving at about 50 to 55. I think it's a little fast, but let's go ahead and put a storm track on this here for you. We'll take this out over the next 90 minutes in time, and we'll kind of track this line as a whole, and we'll move it off to the southeast at about 50 just to kind of give you a little bit of an extra heads up, if you will. So we're looking at places like Ann Arbor at 10:12, coming into Toledo at 11 o'clock tonight. So that's going to kind of be our first areas to be hit, and not to be forgotten about Detroit at 10:22. You're looking at Bryan, Ohio at about 10:40, so in about 35 minutes for you. Angola, should that sell out of LaGrange somehow hold together, looking at about 15 minutes for you before that is kind of over top of you. And kind of zooming this out, this is the expected current track. Now, if I take this out over 2 hours in time, because I think we do have a pretty high confidence that some form of this line will continue for at least the next 2 hours. We kind of track this off to the southeast, and it'll go a little bit faster than 50, again, just to kind of give you as much heads up as possible. So you're looking at Toledo again right around 11 o'clock, Euclid 11:30, Elyria 11:30, Cleveland 11:30, and Parma at 11:40. If this line does kind of hold together in its current state and expectation, which again we do think in some capacity it will do that. So just make sure that you have multiple ways to receive warnings, and also not to be forgotten about. Looks like I have a pretty strong storm developing as well. Just to the north of Ashtabula, there's a little bit of a line there. Not too concerned about severe weather with that. But if you're along I-90 there in Ashtabula or Erie County, you're going to get a little bit of a precursor as to what's to come for your neck of the woods here in just a little bit. And Zach, I'm kind of looking at this line here back across southeastern Michigan from the Detroit radar. I'm not sure if maybe we have a bit of a rain fade issue going on, but what's coming into Ann Arbor right now, that part of the line appears to have weakened perhaps just a little bit. I know we still have the two destructive warnings for Jackson, Michigan. And of course, we're waiting on some more damage reports to start coming in. As you're seeing a few of those there, roof collapse onto a building, possible tornado, 61 mile per hour wind gusts, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, 71 in Lansing. So some pretty strong winds here. But interesting enough, this line, Zach, looks a little interesting on the Detroit radar. I'm not sure if maybe it's a rain fade issue with the radar, but certainly does not look like it's that menacing in some parts, but certainly the storm reports kind of back up that we are seeing a pretty healthy line.
Yeah, definitely the look between the northern Indiana radar and then the Detroit radar is our two paint kind of two totally different pictures.
Yeah.
But it does kind of look like the leading edge of the wind is kind of starting to push out a little more ahead of the heavy rain. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, and then one other thing to note, if you've been out in the atmosphere tonight, been out in the elements, so to speak, across northwest Ohio, it is juicy. Current dew points in Toledo are 79, 82 in Wauseon for a dew point, 81 in Lima for a dew point. And again, remember, we use dew point to tell us the measure of the moisture in the atmosphere, right? We don't use relative humidity because that number bounces up and down all day long. But when we look at the air temperatures as well, we can show you some of those. Air temperature still 84 in Toledo and in Fort Wayne, 81 in Sandusky and in Cleveland. I'll show you those dew points now in a little bit bigger font so you can see. These are some really, really juicy dew points tonight across southeastern Michigan, northwest Ohio. So the atmosphere is primed. We certainly have the moisture to work with. We're just kind of looking at the SPC mesoanalysis. And I kind of showed that earlier. I won't go into too much detail now on this particular video, but just know that surface-based instability across northwest Ohio is pretty good. As you work into northeastern Ohio right now, that surface-based instability is not as impressive, and not even as impressive as last night, so to speak, but still seeing some pretty good CAPE values across most of the Buckeye State tonight. And another parameter that we kind of keep our eyes on is that significant tornado parameter. And I do still have a little bit of concern. Again, I'll pop the watch back on. This is not to say that we don't see thunderstorms down as far south as I-70 tonight, but that's not the main area of interest. But kind of looking at some of our other parameters from the Storm Prediction Center, kind of looking at their forecast out in time, don't be surprised if this line does, even though the stuff to the north of Fort Wayne on the Indiana-Michigan border does not look all that impressive or intense right now. Don't be surprised if maybe something else kind of fires up in that area, or perhaps some other activity around Chicago starts to kind of fire up and work its way off towards the southeast. But Zach, again, I do think that obviously damaging winds are number one concern. Tornadoes certainly a non-zero risk, but damaging winds and of course flooding, big concerns tonight.
Yeah, for sure. The tornado threat, it's likely going to be, your kind of quick spin ups on the leading edge of the line, kind of like we usually see with these kinds of setups. Damaging winds definitely going to be the primary risk. And with the watch kind of mentioning, max winds about 85 mile an hour, that's still, tornado strength at that point. So some of these warnings you probably will need to take seriously in the coming hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll look over at some of our Facebook comments here as well, real quick. I'm sure a lot of folks are concerned. And just again, right now, just know that we are keeping a close eye on this line of storms. As you see here, the watch does include Cleveland, Youngstown, Mansfield, Ashland, Findlay, Lima, Toledo, Defiance, down to Mount Vernon, Marion, New Philadelphia. Goes until 3 o'clock in the morning. Remember, a watch means that conditions are favorable for severe weather to develop, and a warning means that it is imminent or that it is occurring. Kind of remember, we use things like tacos or cupcakes, if you want to kind of compare these two. If you're making tacos, okay, if you have a taco watch, so to speak, your ingredients are there, but it's not quite happening just yet. And then when you make your tacos and that ingredient is done, well, then that's where you have your warning. You're preparing your tacos to be eaten, basically. So that's kind of the easiest way to kind of look at that. So we'll watch that for you very closely here over the next couple of hours. Again, it's very juicy tonight across northeastern Ohio in particular. And we'll continue just to kind of keep an eye on things here for you for the next several hours. So for Zach, Matt, and I'm Nick Dunn, have a good evening, everybody. And take it easy out there. And, of course, we'll keep you posted here.